Our Across the Aisle segment tonight. I don't know if you've noticed, but Democrats can't seem to defend the Iran deal on its merits. You see, Democrats are so concerned about protecting President Obama's legacy that they'll even risk the security of our nation just to pat Obama on the back. But they can't tell us how the Iran deal has worked or why we should keep it. With me now to do so, Democratic political consultant and former Bush administration Department of Homeland Security official Mustafa Tamiz. Mustafa, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, Mustafa, let me ask you. I mean, I don't need to tell you about all the bickering that's been going on about the Iran deal. Republicans think we should withdraw from the deal. Democrats think we should recertify. Why should we recertify? Has this worked?
Well, I'm not sure if all the Democrats think that way. I'm not sure it's as partisan as some might frame it. Look, the issue with it is very simple. North Korea doesn't have any deal like this, and not only they have a nuclear weapon right now, today, but they're in the process of miniaturizing it and putting it in an ICBM missile. Once they do that, it's very difficult to negotiate anything. So if we, let's say, take this deal away that we've got from Iran, where Iran does not have nuclear weapons today, then what's the alternative? Because the likelihood of Iran putting together a nuclear weapon is really significant. And so if there's not an alternative, should we not think through what we would do instead of this deal before we cut the deal out?
Well, certainly we should. I mean, we should have thought about the results, the consequences of this deal before we enacted it. But using North Korea as an example, isn't North Korea a perfect example of why we should not be in a deal like this? Because deals where we engage with a nation who hates us, a nation who wants to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, a nation that calls us the great Satan, and then we don't hold them accountable when they violate this deal in multiple 4 or 5 different ways, doesn't that embolden rogue nations like North Korea to think that they can pursue and develop and miniaturize a nuclear weapon without any consequences from the United States?
Well, I think you bring up very important points. One, North Korea today, and for the last several years, has a nuclear weapon. So I think this one thing that we keep thinking, I think in the public discourse, sometimes people say, well, we're trying to prevent them from getting nuclear weapons. North Korea already has a nuclear weapon. It's a matter of will they miniaturize it or not. But I want you to, I think for your viewers to kind of think about it this way, in some scale. Syria is a country of 5 million people. Iraq is a country of 20 million people. North Korea is a country of 25 million people. Iran is a nation of 90 million people. It is 4 to 5 times the size of North Korea. And right now, Iran not only does not have nuclear weapons, but if this deal puts together, as the deal kind of puts together, that they're not going to have nuclear weapons for the next 15 years, that they won't even start working on them. And they're monitored continuously to make sure that they don't do that. And you have the rest of the world, not only the United States sanctioned, but you have the entire world putting sanctions on Iran and preventing them to do that if they were to break the deal.
Right. No, I understand that, but I think that might be a faulty premise. Because you say, you know, they have stopped pursuing, that this has stopped their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. They don't have one. Do you have any proof that it stopped their pursuit? Because it seems to me that the German intelligence agencies actually caught undercover Iranian agents trying to procure nuclear materials on the black market. I mean, there are 3 or 4 different examples which we can walk through of ways that Iran has already violated this deal. They've violated the spirit of the deal. They're not in good faith keeping this deal with the United States. They're still pursuing what they wanted to pursue. The United States just has our hands tied and aren't able to do anything about it if we remain in it.
Well, I think that the prior to this deal, Iran was putting together centrifuges that you can actually see on satellite images. So there's a way to verify the scale of which, you know, someone is trying to put together nuclear weapons. And so IAEA, you know, goes basically and checks to make sure that they're not violating that deal. President Trump has certified the deal twice so that the United States intelligence agencies are also looking at that on a regular basis. But if we don't have this deal, then there is nothing to prevent Iran from going nuclear, you know, within a very short period of time. And experts say that that short period of time could be, you know, 6 months or a year where Iran may actually acquire nuclear weapons. And once they do, what are we to do at that point? And the other alternative is that we go to war. And so a country of size of Iraq, which is 20 million people, at one point we had almost 150,000 U.S. troops. So if we were to invade a country of 90 million people, Iran, you would have to put 500,000 to 750,000 U.S. troops just to even start that process. So
right, but that's operating under the assumption. That's operating under the assumption that it's a binary choice, that it's either staying in the Iran deal as it is right now, or allowing Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon without any other sanctions whatsoever. That's not a binary choice. There's a third option, and that's holding Iran accountable for the violations that they have already violated under this deal. I mean, there's centrifuges, they're heavy water, they're using private airplanes, airliners, to transport weapons and fighters to Syria, the undercover operations that they were caught trying to procure nuclear materials. I mean, it's going to happen one way or the other. Shouldn't we do something to stop it now instead of pretending that this deal is doing anything more than just creating a smokescreen? Even our oversight, we don't really know what's happening in there because we have to give them advance notice before we come over to look into what they're doing.
Well, so then you talk about what can we do, right? So imposing sanctions, we've been doing that for decades before. That didn't stop Iran nor North Korea. And so that didn't work. So then what's the next option? The next option is basically military action, right? Because if you can't stop someone through sanctions, through bringing the world together that we did, then the other option basically is to gather the troops and go to war with a country with 90 million people. And I'm not sure if there's will in the United States and the world to do that because, again, Iran is a different scale. Syria is a country of 5 million people. Iraq, as I mentioned, a country of 20 million people. Iran is almost 90 million folks. So those are the challenges that we face. And those are challenges we face not just in Iran, but in North Korea. So It's a good example to have. Like, what do we do in North Korea? Do we go to war in North Korea? And if we do, North Korea already has a nuclear weapons. There's 200,000 Americans that live in South Korea, just almost 50 miles away from North Korean border. So these are real world issues. And I think we have to take a step back and look at what are our options before we say, let's go end this deal that somewhat prevents Iran from being nuclearized from 10 to 15 years.
Right. Listen, I get what you're saying. I agree with you. I don't think anyone in America wants to go to war, especially a war that would be as extensive and as dreadful as that. But I also think North Korea can serve as a lesson to us of what happens when you impose just small sanctions and no accountability on a rogue nation that has no intention of being cooperative. You kick the can down the road, and then they end up with a nuclear weapon in what appears to be a lose-lose situation as we are in our country and North Korea. Mustafa, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate your insight.